and Tommy, there's Tommy, carried this heavy thing in this morning. This is the bed off the lathe, and we got it up on our work table here so we can clean it. Got all this chipping paint off, get it cleaned up. See how grungy there. Got plenty of, there's the sawdust that we showed in an earlier video. What you couldn't see is this is where the headstock mounts, and underneath it is years of chips, oil, grease, and there was even a rat's nest. And this is very little compared to what actually fell out of this thing. I've scraped a lot of the grease out and chips already just to be able to get a handle on this thing to move it. So that just kind of gives you an idea about how much was stashed up under this where they couldn't get to it to clean it very well. Here's the back side. This paint, a lot of it we can just chip off, which will save us a lot of time with paint stripper. Very greasy, a lot of paint, but this is the next step. We'll clean it up. We'll get these ways smoothed up. These ways do have some dings, chips, which is pretty common. The chuck would sit right about here, so this was where stuff would fall. And and they might have even dropped the chuck a couple of times on that. That's common. If you don't, you should always put a board under a chuck when you take it off, just in case. From inspecting these ways just visually here, I can't feel any steps or wear in them. Like our Atlas is so bad you can actually feel the wear in the ways. I can't feel wear in these. But the saddle on this thing is pretty long too, so it almost spans, well, it spans about 2/3, I think, of the ways at any given moment anyway. So that probably helps. I don't think we're going to have much wear in this, being that this is a short machine. Shorter machines tend to have less noticeable wear in the ways from end to end. They might be worn out, but from end to end they usually have noticeably less because you're spanning such a large area with the saddle. We're going to start on this today. A lot of this paint is just coming right off. I like that. I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, that we can scrape a lot of this off. And I start with a putty knife here, and I actually have a wood chisel that I use just for scraping stuff like this too. So we'll dig a little deeper. I'm hoping to get a lot of this paint off where we don't have to use a lot of paint stripper, if any. Maybe I can get all this off and we can just hit it with like a wire wheel on an angle grinder, or get a drill with a wire wheel down in here. I've already scraped a lot in here. A lot of this grease. This grease is usually easy to get off. You can see how deep. This is under the headstock up here. So this never really got much attention paid to it because you couldn't get to it until we took it apart. You can see the years. This is 1943, and this is probably never. I would venture to say this has never been apart since it was new. You can see how much grease, chips, dirt collects over the years. We're going to spend a few hours scraping this. I'll scrape for a while till we get a pile of junk down here, and then I'll kind of sweep it up and then get the vacuum everything up out of our way, reassess, start scraping again. Just a lot of elbow grease and working this. Once we get this scraped and clean, I'll wash it down with a degreaser where we can paint it, mask it off and paint it. We'll shine all this stuff back up, mask this off, and paint all this our blue color we're going with. And yeah, this is going to be a lot of work. This is typical of these old machines. This machine is actually not in the roughest shape I've seen machines in. It's, believe it or not, I think this machine was taken well care of, despite what you see here. In a previous video I talked about layers of paint. This part here has, it looks like about 3 layers on it. And this is the back of the bed here, and It's got a green. I can see a distinct green, a lighter green, and a machine gray. And I venture to say I'm still doing some research, but I would venture to say that this was a gray color to begin with from the factory. And this might be even a war finish type gray. When we get inside, just from the back to the inside, you see there's additional layers. There's some safety yellow. It looks like 2 different layers of safety yellow inside the ways here. On the front, we see that tan color that we've seen before. We see the green, it's like hammered green. There's just additional layers on the front and on the inside that you don't see on the back. So we're just going to keep on keeping on scraping. I feel like the yakety sax should be playing with us, doing all this scraping in the background, but I'm sure YouTube would flag us for that. I'll bring you back in a few hours when we're done scraping all this and show you what it looks like. Alright, well, I've scraped for a couple hours. And normally I just only give a scrape for about an hour or so, and then at most, and then start stripping it. But I was really liking how the paint was coming off with the scraper, and I really don't like to use a paint stripper. I'm just not a fan of getting that stuff all over everything. There's still a lot of work to do on this, and this is not by far all that has scraped off that you see on this blue tarp. I've vacuumed this up about 5 times. But as you can see, most of the paint has just come right off of this. And I think what I'm going to do next, we still got some of that yellow paint in here. I think what I'm going to do next is take this to the wash station and try to degrease it, because we hadn't done that yet. We just started scraping on it. But that's a couple hours of scraping, just a little elbow grease, some hard work, and it's starting to look like something workable. It's a Monday morning and I'm here by myself early, so as soon as Tommy or one of the other guys gets here, we'll carry this heavy thing over to the wash station where we can start degreasing it. Alright, we got it in here at the wash station. It's all foamed up with our secret weapon that we use to degrease. Oven cleaner. Oven cleaner works great for this. It's cheap. You can get it at like a Dollar Tree for $1 a can. Ventilate. Please ventilate when you use oven cleaner. But that's it. We're going to let that soak for a while. It'll probably take several washings with this, and then once we get it washed down, we'll immediately dry it off and oil the ways and stuff so it don't rust. You want to make sure and get it oiled quick, because we are using water. We've got the lathe bed back out of the wash area on the table. Now, we didn't get all of this safety yellow. Yes, that is actually supposed to be safety yellow. It's just very faded over time. There's several layers too. We didn't get all that off in the wash, but we got most of it off. I'm not too concerned about painting over some of this if it's stuck very well. I'm going to do a little more scraping to get the loose off. I'm avoiding using any paint stripper just because it's a mess on this, and this thing's pretty heavy and a little hard to handle. I think it's probably weighs about 200 pounds. So it's a little difficult to handle. But we've cleaned off the ways here, and we're going to, some painter's tape, we're going to tape them up real good after we finish scraping so we don't get any paint on those. Talked earlier about wear, and this thing does have, you can feel it, some wear in the ways, and if you can feel it, it's usually pretty bad. But because it's so short, this bed is so short, and the carriage is so long on this, it's worn very, very evenly. It is worn all the way down to about 6 inches from the end here. So being that it's worn that evenly, I don't think we're going to have any problems. If this was a longer lathe, we'd see probably the same wear pattern, but instead of being 6 inches from the end, this thing would extend, and if we did something long, we would end up coming down and ended up cutting a taper if we didn't know how to kind of bump in the cross slide. Now, you can have these reground, but it's very expensive. By the time if I had this machine reground, I could have just bought a new machine for the price. So this thing's going to serve us well. It has got, you can see here, get the glare. It has had a rough life up here near where the chuck sits. It's hard to imagine. I'm actually looking at it from the back. It's hard to imagine. This is the headstock area, and the chuck would sit right in here, and this is where people would let it fly off or drop stuff, and it's pretty rough. Now I've went over this and done a little hand scraping. I actually had to do a little filing in a couple of spots, but I've scraped in some areas just with a straight edge, not with the carriage or anything, but it should be pretty flat for us. The carriage really shouldn't affect us too much up here, but it just looks bad. So we're going to do a little more scraping, tape this up, and throw some paint on it. We'll probably put a layer of etching primer, and then we'll paint our blue and get it set back on the legs of the lathe where we can start assembling some stuff as we do it. Alright, we're done with the bed. Got it painted. It's mounted to the legs. These are our boxes of parts for this thing sitting around. And now we'll move on. Now that we've got it together where it's easier to handle, we're going to lift it and put leveling feet on it. And Tommy, can you grab one of those leveling feet and show us? I would like to have a bigger leveling foot, but these are rated for the weight, and this is what I could afford right now. We can always go back later and upgrade that. So yeah, we're going to do that. Then we're going to slide that headstock that we received. I think that was episode 4 that you saw us get the headstock in finally. And we got that just because it had the gears and stuff in it that we needed. We're still going to have to do a little work to it, but it's a lot cleaner and a lot better shape than the one that was on here, so we're just going to switch it out. And we're going to go ahead and slide that up on here and bolt it down, because we can paint that on the machine. We can mask off and paint it, and it'll also be easier for us to work on if it's mounted to the machine. So that's our next step. But there's the lathe bed done. This is probably going to be the heaviest thing to have to deal with on this machine. The headstock's going to be second, but we're going to have to move it around so much. And the paint on it is really good right now, so we're just going to be able to clean it and repaint it.